So I just spent the last 2 hours coming up with a different trade idea for every NBA team this season. We're a month into the NBA season. A lot of players are going to become trade eligible in a few weeks. And we're starting to figure out who's going to be on the trade market. Do teams want to upgrade on offense? Do they want to upgrade on defense? Do they want to get younger? Do they want to go all in at the deadline? So every trade that I'm going to talk about, it's probably going to favor the team that I am talking about. It's just the idea of this team going in this direction with a trade. And there's a lot of different apron stuff that you have to take into consideration now. So teams like the Phoenix Suns can't trade Jusuf Nurkic for Nikola Vucevic. They have to make sure the salary is either perfect or they got to take less money coming back. So there's a lot of different implications with trades this year with the new CBA. And let me know what you think of your favorite team's trade in the comments below. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? And give me a trade idea down below for your favorite team as well. So we're going to start off with the Philadelphia 76ers this year, who are 2-12. And I don't think that they are going to blow this team up. They're not trading Joel Embiid this season. They just signed Paul George. Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain are their guards for the future. So I have them making this trade with the Detroit Pistons. They can make this trade on December 15th, where they're going to be sending Kelly Oubre, KJ Martin, and one of those Clippers first round picks that they got in the James Harden trade in 2028, which is pretty valuable for Isaiah Stewart coming back. I don't think this team needs to add any offense at the deadline. And while Isaiah Stewart does provide you some positive offense as a big man because he can space the floor, he's a bruiser inside, he can also help them out defensively. He's a better defender than Andre Drummond, but he can also play alongside Joel Embiid, and it could give you a big body as a power forward in the playoffs if you didn't want to put Caleb Martin there. And this is the idea that the 76ers are going to somehow end up in the play-in tournament. The East is so bad this year. I know they've had the worst possible start that you could imagine, but this is the type of trade that I think they could end up making if they want to go all in with this core, and they kind of have to do because Embiid isn't getting any younger, and same with Paul George. A team that has a similar vibe to the Philadelphia 76ers this year has to be the Milwaukee Bucks. They went all in last year when they traded for Damian Lillard, and they had a disappointing year one with Giannis and Dame. Now they ended up going through multiple head coaches last year. Doc Rivers hasn't done a great job, and this team does not have many assets to make a move with. So this is what I came up with. It's going to be them getting Jayshawn Tate and Cam Whitmore from the Houston Rockets in exchange for Pat Connaughton, MarJon Beauchamp, and their 2031 first-round pick. And this was probably the best thing that I could come up with. So they get a little bit younger here, they get more athletic, and they can get some offense coming off the bench. They've been pretty much an average offensive team and defensive team, and nobody really wants Pat Connaughton. MarJon Beauchamp's team option was declined for next year, but Houston just has a ton of young talent right now. Cam Whitmore has been spending some time in the G League this season. They paid Şengün, they paid Jalen Green. They're going to eventually have to pay Tari Eason, Amen Thompson, and some other guys going forward. So they could look to capitalize and get Milwaukee's first rounder in 2031. The odds of Giannis being on that Bucks team or the Bucks team being good then are very low. So they could look to get a return on their investment from Cam Whitmore's positive rookie season. And who knows, maybe he's not going to get much better than that. So they'd be selling high at this point. But I think the Bucks would need to do some really good negotiation to get this deal done. All right, so this is the only 3-team trade I had, and I'm sure it's going to thrill Bulls fans. We're going to get Zach LaVine off this team, and we're going to get Nikola Vucevic off this team. So let's go over this. The Bulls are going to be getting D'Angelo Russell from the Lakers, Jusuf Nurkic from the Suns, Gabe Vincent from the Lakers, same with Jared Vanderbilt, Josh Okogie from the Suns, and they're going to be getting the Lakers unprotected first in 2030 and the Suns first round pick in a swap in 2031. The Suns are getting Nikola Vucevic, Jalen Hood-Schifino, whose team option was declined for next year, Torrey Craig, and a 2031 first, and the Lakers are getting Zach LaVine. So the Lakers are doing a 4-for-1 here, so they probably have to get some guys coming back. The Suns are basically going from Nurkic and Okogie to Vucevic and Torrey Craig, but for the Bulls here, you're getting off of Vucevic, you're getting off of Zach LaVine. You can kind of bottom out this year, which you should do because your first round pick, if it's outside the top 10, goes to San Antonio, and you could see more playing time for the young guys. You also pick up the Lakers first rounder in 2030. LeBron, I know it seems like he's going to be playing forever, but he's not going to be on the Lakers in 2030. Who knows what Anthony Davis or this Lakers team is going to look like then, and you're getting the Suns first rounder in 2031. I know it feels like Kevin Durant could play forever. That's not the case. So you're going to be getting 2 potential very valuable first round picks down the line that you could use in those years. You can make a trade when you're finally good again. You're getting some expiring contracts here and some contracts that you could just play out, and maybe hopefully they could build up their value over time. But the idea for this Bulls trade is let's bottom out and let's get rid of Nikola Vucevic and Zach LaVine at this year's deadline. I mean, the Cavs are doing great right now. They may not even need to make a single move at this year's deadline, but this is what I came up with. They're going to upgrade the backup center position. Let's not have Tristan Thompson get any minutes whatsoever in case there is an injury. So let's get Robert Williams in exchange for George Niang, Dean Wade, and you're going to have to give up a swap in 2030. Now, a lot of the Cavs first round picks are going to Utah from the Donovan Mitchell trade, but this gives you at least some value going to Portland. They're getting a first round swap from Cleveland in 2030 for Robert Williams, who probably isn't going to be in their long-term plans, with Donovan Clingan showing some real positive signs in his rookie season. And the Cavs are not really losing much here. Yes, Niang is shooting the ball well from three this year, but so is Sam Merrill, so is Karis LeVert, so is Isaac Okoro. You could afford to trade Niang, and Dean Wade also has been somewhat disappointing this year, and they don't really need those guys in the playoffs, and Robert Williams, Time Lord, gives them some much needed depth in the front court, and he's also under contract for next year as well. All right, Boston, same thing as Cleveland here. They're really not going to do too much. They're not trading any one of their top 8 guys, so this is just something small I came up with. They're going to be getting Torrey Craig in exchange for Jaden Springer and a future second-round pick. Craig provides them some veteran leadership on the team. He can play some defense. He can knock down some threes. Probably not going to play in the playoffs, but is going to give them a little bit more foundation than Jaden Springer going forward. And for Chicago, you're getting a young player to take a flyer on, and you're getting a future second-round pick for somebody that is not going to be on your team going forward, and you need to enter a rebuild. The Clippers are also kind of desperate right now, like the Milwaukee Bucks, and this is the trade I came up with. They're going to be getting Jordan Clarkson, who's having a down year for the Utah Jazz, and they're going to be getting rid of PJ Tucker's expiring, Bones Highland expiring, and 2 future second-round picks. The Clippers get a different type of shot creator to come off the bench for them. Yeah, Norman Powell is going to be one of their top scorers, same with Harden and Kawhi, and they've been a solid defensive team this year. They need to upgrade this team offensively, and I think you're going to be buying low on Jordan Clarkson, and you can hope to really tap into what he did for Utah a few years ago. As for Utah, you also need to go into a full rebuild. You get a couple seconds and some expiring contracts, and you can now give Jordan Clarkson shots and playing time to some younger players as well. As for the Clippers, you're just trying to make the playoffs this year since you don't own your first-round pick, at least for the next couple of years as well. So at least Clarkson is under contract next year, and you can finally get PJ Tucker off your team. Memphis here, we're going to bring home a familiar face, and they're going to be getting Jonas Valanciunas from the Washington Wizards in exchange for John Conchar, Jake LaRavia, and 2 future second-round picks. This team is getting a lot out of nothing this year. They're getting productive play out of Jay Huff, Scottie Pippen Jr., second-round pick Jalen Wells. They're getting Vince Williams back into the fold. They're going to get Gigi Jackson back into the fold after the new year. This team has some really good talent right now to still be a playoff team in the Western Conference. Let's get some insurance at the big man spot. Jonas Valanciunas shouldn't cost much. Like I said, he knows the system. He's been in Memphis before. Could be a nice veteran big man that's under contract for the next couple of years. That contract is also pretty tradable as well if they want to leverage this in a bigger deal over time. And it could make you a little bit more comfortable if you wanted to trade Brandon Clark down the line, because now you have Jonas Valanciunas either starting next to Triple J or behind Zach Edey in the rotation. And then we're going to stay on the Grizzlies here for the Atlanta Hawks trade. The Atlanta Hawks are going to be getting Marcus Smart and Brandon Clark in exchange for Clint Capella and Larry Nance Jr. For Atlanta here, you're basically moving on from Clint Capella and Larry Nance Jr. to give Onyeka Okongwu even more minutes throughout the second half of the season, and they're both expiring contracts. Maybe you re-sign Larry Nance Jr., but you were never going to re-sign Clint Capella, so at least you're getting something for those guys, and you're taking on Marcus Smart's contract that maybe looked as a negative asset in this league, and the Hawks are not a good defensive team right now, so Marcus Smart, just adding him next to Trae Young and Dyson Daniels and Risa Shea and Jalen Johnson, can provide a new identity for the Atlanta Hawks going forward with their defense. And in reward to taking on Marcus Smart's contract, you're getting Brandon Clark as well, who could also be somebody that could play next to Onyeka Okongwu, could be the backup to Onyeka Okongwu going forward. But maybe it would make a little bit more sense if it was like Bogdan Bogdanovic going to Memphis instead of Clint Capella. Much either. So this is what I came up with. It's going to be Josh Richardson, Nikola Jovic, and Pele Larson in exchange for Davion Mitchell. Yeah, Nikola Jovic is having a down year. He's going to be a restricted free agent, not this offseason, but the following year. And if Miami thinks they are not going to get equal value for him at that point, they could look to get Davion Mitchell, who's been a great defender for Toronto this year. The shot hasn't been there, but he could be somebody that Miami has bird rights on and can help their defense going forward as well. He also just seems like a heat culture guy from what we've seen at Baylor, Sacramento, and now Toronto. You do have to give up a little bit here because you got to make the salary work out, and I don't know if Miami wants to trade somebody like a Jaime Jaquez or a Khalil Ware, because that really wouldn't make a lot of sense for where this team is headed, and I don't think they're going to end up moving Jimmy Butler. And I think for the Raptors, this would be a good return for somebody you're probably not going to re-sign in the offseason. Let's make the playoffs in Charlotte here. That's what the purpose of this trade is going to be. We're going to get Nikola Vucevic in Charlotte. We're also going to get Javon Carter, and the Bulls are going to be getting Josh Green, Micic, and Nick Smith Jr. Now, Nick Smith hasn't really played for the Charlotte Hornets so far, which has been somewhat disappointing, but now they have Trey Mann in that Nick Smith role. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to flourish in Charlotte. They don't need Micic whatsoever because they do have LaMelo Ball, and Josh Green does hurt giving up, and that is going to be the enticing piece going back to Chicago, but you're getting Nikola Vucevic, who's almost shooting 50% from three this season. Mark Williams has always had injury concerns, and you could think about maybe moving on from him or Nick Richards to get somebody else down the line. We don't need to see Taj Gibson playing meaningful minutes for this team anymore. You're also getting Javon Carter to help out their defense as well. This is the idea for Charlotte just to get into the playoffs. I know some of you guys recommended maybe a Brandon Ingram trade idea for them, but I don't think they need somebody like Brandon Ingram with Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball on their team. So they get Nikola Vucevic, who you could put next to Mark Williams as well, because Vucevic is able to space the floor now, and it's just the idea of trying to get Charlotte in the playoffs this season. One of the toughest teams to come up with a trade idea with has to be the Phoenix Suns, but I got this. It's going to be John Collins, Jordan Clarkson, Patty Mills, and a 2031 swap worse going to Phoenix. Utah is getting Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Josh Okogie, and Phoenix's first round pick in 2031. John Collins is playing as good as he has since his best days in Atlanta. Jordan Clarkson is not playing well. I mentioned that before with the LA Clippers, but the Suns are getting an upgrade over Yusuf Nurkic. They obviously want to go 5 out, and John Collins has been a better shooter this year than Yusuf Nurkic. I don't think he's much better as a defender, but he's better than Yusuf Nurkic right now. And it seems like Matt Ishbia does not care about these first round picks going forward. So trade away your 2031 first. You're going to get some offense coming off the bench in Jordan Clarkson as well. And I think Utah would be enticed by this trade because that 2031 Suns pick could be very valuable. You get Grayson Allen, who spent some time in Utah before. He has been not as good of a shooter this year as he's been last year. So maybe he can turn his value around in Utah, and then Utah could eventually flip him. And then maybe after this year, they just buy out Yusuf Nurkic. It's tough to come up with an idea for Sacramento because I just really like their core right now, and they've dealt with some injuries this season. And they're going to call up Portland and see if they could maybe buy high on Toumani Camara, who's a very good player in this league. And I don't know if Portland would want to move Camara, but they may look at this in the Denny Avdija vacuum that Washington sold completely high on Denny Avdija. Maybe they're going to do the same on Toumani Camara, because when they eventually have to pay Camara, they're still going to be at the end of their rebuild, and they're going to have to allocate money to other guys as well. They may get priced out on Camara. As Sacramento, this is somewhat of an all-in move because I need them to add some defense. They're a good offensive team, but they need to add better defenders. And I just didn't want to add another guard to this team because there's plenty of good defensive guards on the market. We talked about Javon Carter and Davion Mitchell before, but Camara gives them a little bit more switchability, but it may actually cost one more first round pick than just one 2027 unprotected first, because Camara is that good as a role player right now. Yep, the New York Knicks really can't do too much this year because we know their core. We know their starting five is going to be Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, and Karl-Anthony Towns. They are getting Mitchell Robinson back in January. I like what I've seen out of Ariel Hukporti, their second round pick, more than Jericho Sims. So they're going to make this trade with the Pelicans, who are probably going to sell at the deadline, and they're going to have to give up 2 second round picks and Jericho Sims, a center that New Orleans can throw into their rotation. And the Knicks are getting Javonte Green, someone that could switch on defense, but also has decent size and can knock down a 3 or 2. And when you look at this Knicks bench, it's headlined by Miles McBride and Campaign, 2 smaller guards, and it's going to eventually be Mitchell Robinson, a center, and Precious Achiuwa, another big man. The Knicks desperately need a wing off the bench going forward. For the Lakers here, we're going to be picking up Bruce Brown and Jakob Poeltl from the Toronto Raptors in exchange for D'Angelo Russell's expiring, Gabe Vincent's contract, Jared Vanderbilt, Jackson Hayes, and a 2029 unprotected first-round pick. But there could be some type of protection on this pick, but LeBron may retire at the end of next year's season. The Lakers have been a great offensive team this year, but they've struggled defensively. Adding Bruce Brown and Jakob Poeltl could help that. Jakob Poeltl's value is at an all-time high for Toronto, so they may want to sell high on him. I don't know when Jared Vanderbilt is coming back. D'Angelo Russell is playing a career low minutes in Los Angeles under JJ Redick, and the Lakers get to add Bruce Brown for some defense. Same with Jakob Poeltl, who can now move 80 to the 4, where you're just getting the best backup center you've ever had under the Anthony Davis Lakers era, and he's also under contract for the next couple of years as well, which gives some upside with this trade going forward. And then hopefully you can bring back Bruce Brown in the offseason, and this gives the Lakers the best opportunity to contend this season. And I don't know if Zach LaVine makes his team that much better, because they do have good enough scoring around AD and LeBron, with Austin Reeves playing really well and Dalton Connect as a rookie. The Magic have an issue right now that when one of their top guys is struggling, they don't have good enough complementary scores. We saw that with Paolo Banchero in the playoffs last year, and with Franz Wagner carrying this team right now, not a lot of guys are stepping up offensively, so they're going to be able to trade Cole Anthony, a player they don't really need with Jalen Suggs and KCP right now. They're going to be trading Jet Howard, who was a lottery pick in last year's draft, but is struggling to find minutes on this team. And they're going to be giving up Denver's first-round pick this year, which is probably going to be in the 20s, to Utah in exchange for Colin Sexton. I really like this trade for the Magic. Sexton this year maybe isn't as impressive as he's been the last 2 years in Utah, but he's a really good scorer, and I think that's what Orlando needs. He's way more efficient than Cole Anthony, and he could be somebody that could start next to to Jalen Suggs as well, because he's not a great defender, but that could offset by KCP being a good defender or Jalen Suggs. I don't think you're going to lose sleep giving up Cole Anthony or Jed Howard, and those two players could be a lot more valuable to Utah because they're going to get more playing time over there, and Utah gets a first-round pick in exchange for Colin Sexton. So you're buying semi-low on Sexton, but I think he could be a huge contributor for a Magic team that looks like they're going to be in the playoffs this year. For Dallas, we're going to add some defense to this team. They've been a top 10 defense and offense this year. They're going to be getting Davion Mitchell from the Toronto Raptors in exchange for Dante Exum and Olivier Maxence Prosper. So Dallas can't trade Jaden Hardy this year since he got his rookie extension, and he's playing at the level that Mavericks thought he could be playing, and he's not been living up to expectations that Mavericks fans thought he could be this year. So we're going to get some good defense in that backcourt in Davion Mitchell, who's just a great defender. We're going to get him out of Toronto, open up more minutes for Jamal Shed once his team is fully healthy over there. So Mitchell, I don't think was going to go back to Toronto at the end of this year's season. Dallas can look to upgrade defensively with this bench unit, and you're trading somebody that's not in the rotation and someone that isn't probably going to play for you in the playoffs this year. Because if you want to get rid of that Maxi Kleber contract, you're going to have to attach a first-round pick to it, and I don't think Dallas should move any more future first since they did that last year with the Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington trades. Brooklyn here needs to sell high on one of their veterans, and they're going to be getting Kelly Oubre, KJ Martin, and a swap between the Clippers and the 76ers in 2029 in exchange for Dorian Finney-Smith. They're calling up Philadelphia. They see they're desperate this year, and they realize their window isn't as open as they thought it would be in the Paul George, Joel Embiid era. Dorian Finney-Smith makes the 76ers better and is an upgrade over Kelly Oubre Jr. The 76ers paid KJ Martin to aggregate him in a trade at this year's deadline, and Finney-Smith is shooting the ball well from three this year. He's still an above average defender in this league. He makes Philadelphia better, and Brooklyn, you're just going into that rebuild. You can maybe move Kelly Oubre or KJ Martin in a different trade, but you're getting a very valuable 2029 first, because who knows what the Sixers or Clippers are going to be then. Denver's also another tough team to come up with trade ideas with, and it's going to be Dorian Finney-Smith going to Denver as well. They're going to take on Jalen Martin as a two-way to make some of this money work, and Brooklyn is getting Zeke Naji, Dario Saric, Vlatko Konchar, and a 2031 first-round pick. For Brooklyn, it's just the idea of you got to take on some bad money here. You're selling higher on Dorian Finney-Smith, and you may get a valuable 2031 first, but for Denver, you're getting Finney-Smith, who's a really good role player. I don't know if you're going to be able to move Michael Porter Jr., and you don't want to touch that four-man core right now that's been so good for them. Christian Brown is playing well, and Finney-Smith makes this team a little bit deeper. You're not losing sleep over trading any of these players, and you hope in 2031 with still Jokic, Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, if they're still on this team, especially Jokic, you're going to be good then. So you're not going to lose sleep maybe trading that 2031 first if it could add on to this window and maybe get you a second title in the Nikola Jokic era. I don't know how desperate the Indiana Pacers are, because they've definitely been disappointing to start off this year. Isaiah Jackson is out for the year. James Wiseman is out for the year. Miles Turner's been banged up at times, and he's also a free agent at the end of this year's season. So this one may be a little controversial to Pacers fans, but I'm going to have them get Drew Eubanks and Walker Kessler from the Utah Jazz in exchange for Jarris Walker and Johnny Firth. For Utah, I really like this trade because they can actually play Jarris Walker, because Jarris Walker is only playing 16 minutes a night here in Indiana with all these injuries as well. Once Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith come back, we may not see Walker play these amount of minutes again, and Obi Toppin is playing well, Pascal Siakam's playing well. Indiana could look to get some upside at the center position, getting Eubanks and Walker Kessler. You can maybe even run some lineups with Kessler and Turner out there together if Turner is showing good consistency with his three-point shot. This trade makes you better defensively, and they are a bottom 10 team defensively in the NBA right now. You're going to have to give up something to get something, and that's what the Pacers are doing here. I think the Pelicans should sell Brandon Ingram at the trade deadline. Just bottom out this year, try to get a top 5 pick, similar to what Memphis was doing last year with all their injuries. They ended up with the 9th overall pick in a weaker draft, so the Pelicans could end up with a top 5 pick in a very strong draft. And imagine they get Marcus Smart, Brandon Clark, and 2 future first-round picks in exchange for Brandon Ingram this year. That could really set them up perfectly long-term, because you're getting Brandon Clark as a solid big man, and him and Yves Missi is something going forward. Marcus Smart is somebody who can maybe turn his career around. He can help you out defensively, and Herb Jones on the perimeter could still be solid together. You're getting 2 future first-round picks. Aren't going to be lottery draft picks, but could at least be something for you down the line. Like I said, you're hopefully just going to add a top 10 pick. You're not moving Zion. You're not moving Herb Jones or Trey Murphy or DeJounte Murray, and I don't think anybody's going to want to trade for CJ McCollum, so you may have to trade Brandon Ingram because you don't want to lose him for nothing in free agency. Coincidence here, we're going to have the Pistons go all in this year. Yeah, we're going to have them trade Tim Hardaway Jr., B-Ball Paul, Marcus Sasser, and a first-round pick in exchange for Brandon Ingram. I struggle to find where Brandon Ingram's value is at because he's been great this year. He's definitely improved from last year, but he is a free agent at the end of the year. So you're trading for an expiring contract. Who knows? Brandon Ingram may not like it in Detroit, or you got to pay him $50 million a year. So it's going back to what I said in the beginning of the video. The team that I'm going to be talking about, they're probably going to be favored in those trades. So the Pelicans, we're getting a nice haul for Brandon Ingram, but for the Pistons side of things here, not going to give up as much as the Pelicans were getting in that Grizzlies trade. So for the Pistons here, you want to make the playoffs. You could definitely be in playoff contention this year with the way that Cade Cunningham is playing, the way they've looked defensively. Ingram also could be another secondary shot creator next to Cade Cunningham, and he's still a young player in this league. So you're going to get that upside, hopefully long-term. I think he could play alongside Asor Thompson and Ron Holland. You're not crowding that position too much, and you're not going to lose sleep giving up Marcus Sasser or a first-round pick going forward. Like I said, though, I struggle to find where Brandon Ingram's value is going to be at. For the Toronto Raptors, they're going to call up the Miami Heat, and they're going to do a different version of that trade I talked about before. They're going to be taking on Duncan Robinson's contract. He hasn't been great this year for the Miami Heat, and you're getting a 2029 top 5 first in exchange for Kelly Olynyk and Davion Mitchell. And I don't know if Kelly Olynyk and Mitchell is warrant of a first-round pick, but it's also them taking on Duncan Robinson's $20 million contract basically next year as well. So they're eating some bad money. They're a bad team, so they should want to get draft picks for taking on bad money, and that's the idea of this trade. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Houston. I didn't have them going after Giannis Antetokounmpo or Joel Embiid or a Jimmy Butler. Now, I definitely thought about Giannis here in Houston. I think it would be really cool, but something that could be a little bit more realistic. The Rockets are going to be trading Jabari Smith Jr., Jock Landale, Jayshawn Tate, Aaron Holiday, and a 2025 first-round pick to Brooklyn for Cam Johnson and Dennis Schroeder. I really like this trade for the Houston Rockets because he's a lot better of an offensive player than Jabari Smith Jr. is. The Rockets are playing like a top 5 team in the Western Conference, and Cam Johnson is under contract for the next 3 years as well. So it's not like you're doing all this for a rental. It's going to hurt giving up Jabari Smith Jr., but he's also going to be extension eligible at the end of this year. And we've seen flashes from Jabari. We've seen struggles. I don't know if he's going to have the opportunity to break out in Houston with all these mouths to feed. So you get Cam Johnson, a really good floor spacing veteran, and you're getting Dennis Schroeder, who could run the second unit with Amen Thompson and Tari Eason. You're getting off of Jock Landale, which Rockets fans may enjoy. And Brooklyn could be enticed by turning Jabari Smith Jr. into a really good player where he's going to be a top option in Brooklyn under Jordy Fernandez. You're going to get a first-round pick at the end of this year as well. So it could be a win-win trade all around. For the Spurs, I came up with a buyer trade, not a seller trade, because the Spurs are 500 at the moment I'm recording this. Let's get Wemby in the playoffs. So I'm going to have them move Trey Jones and Charlotte's first-round pick. That is a heavily protected first-round pick in exchange for Robert Williams, who I think is going to be on the trade block. Wemby may deal with some injuries over the course of the season, so you're going to get some better defensive insurance than Zach Collins. And with Chris Paul there, with Stephon Castle blossoming, I don't know if Trey Jones is going to be on this team much longer, so he may be more valuable to a different team. And with Wemby taking all these threes, you can have Robert Williams there in the paint getting a decent amount of rebounds. All right, for the Utah Jazz, I had just the same trade that I talked about before with the Phoenix Suns because I really liked it for them. They're getting a valuable first-round pick in 2031. They're trading away John Collins and Jordan Clarkson. They can play more to their young guys. They could buy out Yusuf Nurkic. Grayson Allen could be a nice shooter for them. And I just want to see Utah sell a little bit at this year's deadline. They need to bottom out. I also want to see a top pick in Utah this year because I do still like their young core going forward. For the Thunder, you're going to have to trade something to get something. It may hurt trading away Isaiah Joe, but I have them acquiring Cam Johnson and Shake Milton from the Nets in exchange for Isaiah Joe, Kenrich Williams, Ousmane Dieng, and their first-round pick this year. You don't mind trading your first this year. It's going to be bottom 5 in this NBA draft. Isaiah Joe could be a good shooter for the Nets. I'm not sure how valuable him and Dieng would be to Brooklyn, but getting Cam Johnson in OKC, man, oh man, would that be something special in that offense? Isaiah Joe's three-point shot has been down to his standards this year, and Cam Johnson is going to be a huge upgrade in that offense as a complementary piece. He's played in some big moments before with Phoenix in those 2021 NBA Finals. And maybe just OKC makes a trade with Kenrich Williams, Ousmane Dieng, and a future first that's around $11 million. But I said, let's go after a big name at the deadline. That's going to be Cameron Johnson. A lot of teams are going to want him, and OKC, I think, has the assets to get him. For Portland here, we're going to be trading Robert Williams here to a team that needs a big man. I mentioned it before for the Indiana Pacers. So they got Walker Kessler in their version. For this trade, we're going to be sending Robert Williams to Indiana in exchange for Aaron Nesmith and a 2028 lottery pick. I think that could stay as a lottery pick, and it could eventually become multiple seconds. But for Portland, you're getting somebody that could provide you 3-and-D complementary upside long term. You're buying a little bit low on Aaron Nesmith, who was good last year, struggled this year, ended up getting injured, and Indiana may be desperate for a big man. So you're trying to find some value for Robert Williams there. I think this would be a really good return for Portland. Minnesota, really tough team to come up with trade ideas with because they're paying a lot of money to their core. I don't think they're going to end up moving Gobert, Naz Reid, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo. So I have this trade, and I don't know how Timberwolves fans are going to feel about it. It's going to be Mike Conley, Joe Ingles, and 3 second-round picks going to San Antonio in exchange for Chris Paul and Sidy Cissoko. So pretty much Ingles and Cissoko are in this trade to make the money work, and Minnesota is basically going from Mike Conley to Chris Paul. Chris Paul's an expiring contract. I don't know if any team's going to give up a first for him, even though he's been playing better this year, and that's why I have Minnesota getting him, because Mike Conley has not been playing well. San Antonio could eat into Mike Conley's money next year because they have cap space going forward. He could be a mentor still to Stephon Castle if they want a veteran in their locker room, and they're going to get 3 second tier. Minnesota can't really trade any first, but they're getting an upgrade from Mike Conley to Chris Paul to try to win a title this year, because Mike Conley has not been playing very well so far in Minnesota this season. I know it's reoccurring, but I have Cam Johnson in another trade. I'm sorry, but I definitely think he's getting traded this year, and I think so many teams could use him. I got Golden State getting Cam Johnson and Day'Ron Sharpe in exchange for D'Anthony Melton, who's out for the year, Kevon Mooney, I know it hurts to give him up, but Jonathan Kuminga as well. So this is a similar scenario to the Nets trade with the Rockets before, them getting Jabari Smith Jr. instead of draft picks for Cameron Johnson. Maybe they like Kuminga. The thing though with Kuminga, they'd have to pay at the end of this year. Jabari Smith Jr., you would have to pay at the end of next year's season. And I don't think the Warriors are getting a big name at this deadline. You're not getting Giannis. I doubt you're getting Jimmy Butler, because you'd have to give up Andrew Wiggins, and I think that hurts your team a little bit as well. But you should definitely move D'Anthony Melton, because he's making a decent amount of money. It's similar to when Danny Green got traded a couple years ago, and he's out for the year. So you got to leverage his money. I don't think Kuminga is going to have a long-term future on this team. He's a restricted free agent at the end of this year, and I think he'd be better suited in a different offense. And Cam Johnson in this Golden State offense would be unreal. They've been a good defensive team this year, and you can upgrade offensively with Cam Johnson, who I've talked about multiple times in this video, could be a very good floor spacer and complementary piece to Steph and Draymond going forward. You also get Day'Ron Sharpe in this trade as well, who I think could be a better backup big man than Kevon Mooney. And the last trade here, the Washington Wizards are getting a lottery protected first and Tim Hardaway Jr. in exchange for Kyle Kuzma. I had the idea of the Pistons adding another scorer before when I had them trading for Brandon Ingram. This may cost them a little bit less, and they're getting Kyle Kuzma, who has not been playing well this year and is under contract. I think this lottery protected pick would be a lot different than that Brandon Ingram pick, because this probably will be like lottery protected, then top 14, then top 13, then would turn into multiple seconds. So the Wizards will never get anything here until the Detroit Pistons make the playoffs in 2027 or onwards. But I just want to see Kyle Kuzma off the Washington Wizards, and I think them getting at least something for him, and you can now give more playing time to the youngins. I don't think he's helping this team going forward. I don't think he's the best leader in the locker room and the veteran that you want as you are in the middle of this rebuild still. So that is going to be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. That was very tough to do, to come up with 30 different trade ideas. Let me know if you liked your team's trade in the comments below, or if you didn't. Please let me know down below if you liked the idea or if there's something you would change. Drop a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy this video and you want to see another version of this before the trade deadline, because I'll definitely do that, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.